Hello, everyone, and welcome back to OneSoccer. I'm your host for today, Josh Deming. I am joined by my colleague, Alex Gangue-Ruzic, and today we have a couple topics to discuss. Alex, it's a busy Wednesday, I'd say. I wasn't expecting it, but our women's national team dropped their roster for the upcoming friendlies against Brazil. Alex and I will dive into that. And we know who the men will play to try to qualify for the semifinals of the Nations League and, of course, the all-important 2024 Copa America. They will have two shots at it. We will get into that in a bit, but we know who they play, and that, of course, is Jamaica. So first things first, we have an order here, and we are going to begin with the women's national team roster. If you guys are joining us today, drop a like on the stream, get your guys' thoughts and opinions in, starting with how you think this roster looks. You happy with it? You angry with it? Anyone left out that you wanted to see? We can get a little lo-fi tunes going for us here. Sounding nice. So, Alex, the roster is on the screen. Give me your initial thoughts.
Yeah, it's not that many surprises, I'd say. I mean, obviously the new faces stands out. I mean, Melissa Dagenet in goal gets added in as the fourth keeper, and then in midfield, Emma Regan. She was, having a great season out in Denmark. Former League One BC alumni with varsity at the time. It's, of course, now not somewhat. So that was pretty cool to see from that perspective. But yeah, other than that, not many surprises. More so, no Simia Wujo. I do wonder if that's probably school related. Sometimes around this time of year, those sorts of commitments can crop up. We've seen that in the past. Otherwise, as well, a bit light in midfield. I mean, there's almost as many goalkeepers as there are midfielders. But other than that, I'd say pretty straightforward. Deanne Rose returns, Jade Riviere returns, which is good news after their various knocks and injuries.
Yeah, Barca Boy says decent squad. Luke Kerr says a good women's national team roster after touching on that Jamaica is a difficult opponent. But if you guys are in the chat, let us know this squad. What do you rate it out of 10? Like Alex said, not a lot of surprises. Pretty strong roster. Alex, I'm curious because you did kind of touch on it, but I feel like the trend every time I see this type of graphic is the midfield. It looks like there's so many more defenders and attackers in the midfield. Any concerns there for you that we're seeing this trend continue or no?
I guess it again shows that I'd imagine Christine Sinclair is probably on the midfield depth chart versus up front where, I think now at the number 9, it's, Nichelle Prince, Eveline Vienne, Jordan Hoytema. There's a few options there. Chloe Lacasse as well can play the number 9. So I'd say it just shows that Sinclair is probably more of a midfielder than she is a forward as listed on this graphic. Although she did play up front in the last qualifiers, but I guess that was also partly circumstantial. As well, Jade Rose could probably she can slot up in the midfield, Ashley Lawrence. So there are options, but it is kind of funny to see, the number of true out-and-out center midfielders because, yeah, like you say, it looks just so stark on a graphic to see 5, and one of them's, Emma Regan, who this is, looking for one of her first caps with the senior team. Just adds to it that, okay, that's a lot of pressure on Fleming, Grosso, Quinn. And then, of course, someone like Aladu, who herself is, still relatively new to the fold, although she's in, scintillating form over in Portugal.
Now, Luke gives it a 9 out of 10. That's probably about where I would put it. I'm excited for these two friendlies, Alex, because we get to see them travel to Montreal as well as Halifax, and that's the one I'm the most excited for, just to see. I mean, they're deserving of a match like this, I think. I'm really excited. But I'm curious to see for the friendlies like this, we've seen the women's national team has played Brazil quite a bit in recent times. So what do you want to take out of these two friendlies? Because there's a lot of different things that we could touch on, whether it's tactics, a bit of a changing of the guard, maybe in a way. What is the biggest things that you want to see and take away, hoping to take away from these two friendlies?
Just say continue the preparation for 2024 now that you've qualified for the Olympics. You gave fans as well a taste of what you can be about this new identity last camp, playing in a back 3, playing a bit more on the front foot, defending on the ball as much as you are defending off the ball. So just continue to build on that. And, for example, if you're going to stick with this 3-4-2-1, continue to experiment within it. See what some other options could look like at wingback, for example. I mean, you look just at some of the options. Gabby Carl, just capped off a pretty solid season at fullback for the Washington Spirit. Bianca St. George has been scoring a lot of goals from wingback, with Chicago. So those are two options that could certainly get a look at wingback. Of course, Ashley Lawrence continue to let her thrive. Sydney Collins, who had a great camp last time, experiment within that center back group. Of course, Jade Rose has taken a huge step up. But you can also continue to experiment, maybe slide Collins back in. She can play at center back, slide in, a Gabby Carl as well if you want. In midfield, continue to look at different options. What can an Aladu do, given her proficiency on the ball? Then up front, continue to experiment with combos. I really like that Lacasse, Prince, Leon trio, but, a healthy Deanne Rose certainly has to be in the mix up front, I imagine. And she's had a good start to the season with Leicester since her return for injury. You got to see Eveline Viens as well, up to 4 goals in 6 games for Roma, including 2 in the Champions League. See what Viens can do. So I just continue to experiment within what you learned last camp, really.
All right, we got a couple clips for us. Armin's going to update us as we go along from Bev. So the first one we're going to do is going to be on Christine Sinclair's future. So let me prep that for you guys here. All right, let's do this.
Yeah, I think, it's obviously the question on everyone's mind. I think what I can confirm and what you see is obviously Christine is available and selected for this window. I think we've obviously had some confidential conversations about where Christine's at and what the future looks like, but I don't feel like that's my place to communicate that. And what I am thrilled, and for any new young player coming in, they get a camp with Christine Sinclair and her quality and what she brings in the training environment and on the pitch. So I think, for me, it's not really my place to communicate Christine's plans. However, as it stands right now, she's in this camp, she's been selected, and thrilled to have her in the environment again.
All right, Alex, any takeaways from that one? We got a couple more clips. We got Alicia Chapman's pregnancy and playing in Montreal we will get to. So first on Sinclair's future, kind of touched on it, but what are your thoughts from that?
Not surprising. I think this next months are going to be crucial, especially, Christine Sinclair, as she usually is, focused on the Portland Thorns. They finished still in one of the top 2 spots. They get a bye in the NWSL playoffs. They're the defending champions. Sinclair still has a big role to play. See that out, see what happens if she wants to renew her contract or not, because I think personally this October window, this November window for sure, and then after that it just depends if she's got a contract next year, if she's still around, because like as Priestman mentions, as long as she's around, it's going to be very valuable for these sorts of camps where you're able to bring in some extra bodies. Of course, when you whittle down to Olympics, especially if it stays as an 18-player squad, even if it extends to a 22-player squad like it did last Olympics, that's going to be a tough decision to make, just because Sinclair might be in a bit tough to make a squad like that with some of the young players that are emerging. But certainly, as long as she's playing, that mentorship aspect will be valuable. So I'm not surprised to see her call in, and I'm curious to see what she says. I'm pretty sure last year's decision to stay with Portland was a very last-minute one. She kind of announced it at the championship parade, and everyone's chanting Sinclair, Sinclair, come back. So, kind of does the mic drop, I'm not leaving. Well, we'll see if she has a similar moment again this year to prolong the career.
Yeah, I mean, someone with her talent and the legacy she's had, it's hard to ever imagine her hanging up the boots. So I would like to imagine that she's going to play as long as she possibly can. I do still think she's got some stuff to give. It's just like you said, changing the guard. How will this team look? Like whether she's in the squad, starting 11, on the bench, how will it look going forward? Because she in my mind still has a part to play for the time being. But we're going to circle back here because Vincent's got a question talking about the lack of midfielders. We were kind of talking about this, meaning a 2-person midfield. So Alex, let's quickly, just for fun, come up with a starting 11. Just off the cuff. We can maybe build one a little bit later if we have time. But off the cuff, give me a couple options. So one with a 2-person midfielder, which I don't think you necessarily want. I don't know, or one with a 3. What would the system be? You looking 3-5-2 probably?
Well, we'll see. Because honestly, I mean, Priestman ran a 2-person midfield against Jamaica to success, and it was Quinn and Fleming. So I'd say that's pretty much expect that duo to start at the very least. I'd say Sheridan in goal, although, D'Angelo has certainly been pushing, although, had unfortunate error, or I guess earlier this month for Arsenal, but ended up claiming the win on the day. So I'd say Sheridan in goal, back three, probably at this point just Buchanan, Gilles, Rose. Those are your three best center back options, although Zadorsky is, a good option. Rose just brings something on both sides of the ball, speed as well, that, can help Canada play this back three, whereas Zadorsky is phenomenal on the ball, as we know. But maybe that speed should be better suited in the middle of a back three. And, maybe we do see that with Gilles and Buchanan on both sides of her, but I'd probably say Rose at wing back, Ashley Lawrence on one side. Based on last camp, Sydney Collins or Gabrielle Carl, take your pick. Midfield, Fleming, Quinn. Up front, Prince, Lacasse, Leon. Maybe you slip in a Grosso at one of those winger positions to get her on the field and kind of turns into a 3-5-2. You could do something as well where you put like a trio of, like Leon and Prince playing as your strikers, or Leon and Vian, or Vian Prince, and then with Grosso tucking underneath, or you could just go front three with Lacasse, Prince, Leon, take your pick there. So I'd probably say it's likely going to be a 3-4-2-1, and if there is a third midfielder, it might be someone like a Grosso kind of slotting in as more of that advanced midfielder, just because Priestman, I think, prefers the stability that a pivot like Quinn and Fleming gave in the last camp. And, that was why it was unfortunate to see Grosso not start, but we'll see if she can kind of work her way in and prove that maybe she can be an option in that double pivot, or force Priestman's hand and turn it into more of a 3-5-2, or maybe even like a 3-1-4-2.
Yeah, I like both options. Rose in the back three for me, for sure. That's absolutely a player I just adore watching. Lacasse up front, and then Grosso, I'm kind of leaning towards your first opinion, the fact that she probably may not start the first match, and see, who gets that first start. She can come in the starting 11 for the second, but I kind of agree. I think it's going to look like that 3-4-2-1, and the two players I like keeping an eye on recently has been Lacasse and Rose at the back. Just so calm. I think she's going to get better and better, and I'm excited to see what they can do. But we have a couple more clips to go through. First on Alicia Chapman's pregnancy.
It took me a while to figure out who you were talking about there, because we all call it Chappie, and I was like, Alicia, and it took me a while to click there. And listen, I think I'm absolutely over the moon for Chappie. I think for anyone that knows Chappie, she's, an unbelievable competitor, winner, and we all see that tough side of her. But I think when she called me after the World Cup and, shared the news, I was absolutely over the moon for her. And it's a different part of her life that's about to be around the corner. I know that as a mum, it changes your world and your perspective. But Chappie being Chappie was, Bev, due on this date, I'm going to make a push to be in that Olympic squad. And so I think you're right. I think nobody really has experienced that, but you've seen it around the world where, mothers have given birth and then come back and had some of the best moments of their career. So I think Chappie being the ultimate competitor, and what I do know, I've had moments with Chappie where maybe the medical sports science team have said in the Olympics she'll play 60 minutes, and next minute she's 120 minutes in, still going. So she has an incredible mindset that if there's anybody who can do that in that tight window, it's probably Chappie.
Love to hear it. So first things first, congratulations to Alicia Chapman. I'm just going to put that in the chat. Alex, what do you take away from that? Really nice moment there, I think, between coach and player.
Yeah, it's going to be, fun just to watch. Cause as you mentioned, just congrats first and foremost to Alicia. It's very exciting, of course, to start a new chapter like that. And it's also, going to be fun to see the journey, because like Priestman's mentioned, it feels like over the last few years, it's been there's been a rise of high profile stars showing that, okay, you can, earlier in your career, if you were ever to get pregnant, some people would be like, oh, that's the end of your career, even if you were young. And it shows that, okay, no, you can, someone like Crystal Dunn, Alex Morgan going away and doing it and coming back and being even better. Like, some of the seasons Alex Morgan's put up, Crystal Dunn, that, it's not going to define a career. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chapman returns from this, and if she can make that goal. Of course, depend on what that recovery looks like, what position she ends up playing, because if they're playing a back three, she might have to end up being more of a left center back option than a wing back option. And So of course, depend on what the depth chart's looking like. But she does have that versatility. She is a key leader. So it's like Priestman said, I wouldn't, at this point, I wouldn't count her out of anything. And at the very least, like you mentioned, she's a competitor. And if she comes back in, and even if she doesn't make that Olympic squad, you at least know that whoever earns it in front of her is going to be, have that fire, have that push behind her. And that's kind of what you want from your pool. You want competitive players like that. So it's good to see that fire still plans to be there, that she wants to be at next year's Olympics, and that this isn't maybe a sign that, she is already thinking about that next chapter post-career.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a wonderful moment, like being able to have a baby, like it's a big deal, but it's cool to see, she's like, I'm ready to have the baby, but I'm not done yet. There's still work to do. So we'll have to wait and see. But the next two clips we have, I'm going to play them back to back. It's playing in Montreal and playing in Halifax. I'm really excited for the fans in Halifax, because they've done such an incredible job this season. Well, pretty much throughout, but this season in the Canadian Premier League, having a team that was as fun to watch as they had, kind of an underdog story at the beginning of the season. Not a lot had them, really pushing for playoffs, and to see their fans, and now they're getting the women's national team to come in at a good moment. They sold that out right away. I'm really excited to see what Bev had to say on it, but we're going to play the Montreal clip first, followed by the Halifax one, and then we'll break it down. So if you guys are just joining us on the stream today, guys, be sure to drop a like. We're discussing the women's national team roster, and then we'll discuss the men's matchup with Jamaica. And two clips are coming up from Bev touching on playing in Montreal and Halifax. So here is the clip from Montreal.
Yeah, we obviously played there in the celebration series after we got the gold medal, and so I think, to play on the weekend, I think that's going to be a great experience. And, from all accounts, whenever we were looking about where we put this game, Montreal was desperate to have the Canadian women's national team. So, yeah, I think we've obviously got a rich history. The players in the group, quite a few are from that region, and that's going to be a great occasion for them. And I think, it's just really nice to be able to take this team to different parts of the country. Both Montreal, Halifax, that's what the players love. They're over the moon to be playing in both of those locations. So yeah, I'm excited to get to Montreal. I love it personally. I love the city. It's got great memories from the home World Cup, and obviously from being there recently.
And now Halifax.
Yeah, I can't wait. When that was put on the table to go to Halifax, I think, we know it's probably going to be a little bit cold, but nice, like grass pitch, which is really good. But absolutely, I think it's known to be an incredible atmosphere. It sold out very, very quickly, as we expected. And I think, this will be the first time, if I'm not mistaken, that the women's national team will be playing there. So to know we get a unique following and get to take this team around the country is really exciting. So I can't wait. I know when we played at Pacific, with the team, it was a similar sort of atmosphere. You're closer to the fans, and it's a really nice atmosphere. So we're excited.
I love it. I think it's gonna be fantastic. I'm really, really looking, not to take anything away from going to Montreal, but I'm really excited to see them going to Halifax. Alex, what was your take on the two?
Yeah, it's just exciting, and I think really hearing Priestman's last comment on the Halifax, it does make you realize that they've literally gone coast to coast over the last 2 years, like playing a game on Vancouver Island, and now about to play a game in Nova Scotia. And I think it's just great, that chance to take the team everywhere and get these moments, because I was at the game on the island, and it was a special game just being in there with how packed it was, people getting a chance to see their idols up close and personal. And I compare to you look at the other side of things, where there's been that debate on the men's side of, okay, are we getting our team around the country enough? And it's true, you think about where the men's national team games have been over the last few years, it's been pretty much mostly in Toronto. There's been a couple in Vancouver, of course the two in Edmonton, one in Hamilton, which you can kind of is close to Toronto. I won't say it's an extension to Toronto, because I know people in Hamilton they're very proud of Hamilton, but yeah, that's pretty much it. But then you look on the women's side, that they've been able to go to Vancouver Island, to Vancouver. They had the games in Ottawa, of course. They had the games in Montreal, now in Halifax. I think it's just great to see that from coast to coast. And it'll help, fans connect with this team. I think Halifax is going to really appreciate this moment and step up. We've seen it. I mean, they sold out the tickets in 20 minutes. Like, that's absurd. 20 minutes, 6,000 tickets. Like, that's a pretty good, showing for a game on a Tuesday night, on Halloween night. Like, this isn't a Saturday night game, prime time. This is Tuesday night, and they're like, no, we want to be there. We want to show support for our team. So I just say shout out to the city of Halifax, and shout out to the women's national team for being able to provide these opportunities.
Absolutely. And like I said, it made perfect sense to me seeing the way that the season went, the fans. This is a deserving moment, and it's great to see, a fan base like this get rewarded. So anyone in the chat, let me know if you're going to one of the matches for the women's national team, whether it's in Montreal or Halifax, because we have HFX Phlegm in here who says it should be an exciting night in Halifax, and it really should be. It's a rewarding opportunity for an incredible fan base who just crushed it all year long. So I'm really excited for them. And I hope we get to see more of this. I really do. Men's national team, women's national team, really, building that bridge between the Canadian Premier League and the national team. It's really cool to see. So I'm very, very much excited for it. But we do have a couple other clips from Bev, and then we'll wrap up the women's section of the stream and move on to the men's in probably 10 or so minutes. So the next one we have is bouncing back from the World Cup. So this is Bev's thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I think when the dust settled, you reflect, and I think it wasn't easy. I mean, that's the reality. I knew the minute that World Cup whistle went, and we all felt how we felt, not only for the players, but for the staff to pick it up again and go again. I must credit my staff. I know time off, you don't really get it. I know we sort of had that initial week after the World Cup, but you can imagine you've thrown your heart and soul into a disappointing World Cup, both as players and staff. But I think, a credit to the players. I mean, ultimately, we hit a hard reset. We talked about being uncomfortable. We talked about pushing hard in every training session. They embraced probably a big ask, which was a new formation with arguably 2 days to train it. And, I've always talked about bravery. And I think in that moment, you had a choice to sort of roll out what we'd done, which clearly didn't work completely, or to roll the dice and do something that deep down I genuinely believed, after reflecting, was the right thing to do. And the players, being the players that they are, completely embraced that, put the work in, both on and off the pitch, and we got to see the results of that, when they turned up. So it was really, the nicest part for me was when the whistle went at the end of that Toronto leg, and just to see the smiles on the faces of the players again, and to know what winning feels like. I know that sounds stupid, but it's not something the group have been used to, is the real low. Like, if you look in the last 2-3 years, we've not lost many games. 2023 has been that year. So to get that winning feeling back again was really good. I think now the important thing is a friendly can be viewed as very sort of like laid back if you're not careful. Not that I expect that from this group, but we have to keep moving forward. We can't stand still now and just have a flash in the pan when it really matters. I think we've got to keep moving the bus forward.
So the women's national team did have a stretch of frustration, I'd say, leading up to the World Cup. The World Cup did not go their way. They bounced back, qualified for the Olympics. But what did you take from her thoughts there, from bouncing back from the World Cup and that frustration leading up to it?
Yeah, I think it showed in September. I think that was really it, because, I mean, there's a reason why we were so worried heading into that September window. And looking back, it's almost surprising. Like, yeah, they kind of just walked through the Jamaica game, because, I mean, you talk about the month leading up, it was so much like, they're going to be lucky just to, eke one out. This is a good Jamaican side. So, yeah, I think it showed that the talent's there, and that when this group, puts its mind to something and just finds that right mindset, they can cruise. But yeah, it's a good point, because like you mentioned, this year had been anything but. Between She Believes in February, that was pretty much the Japan and US games were a lot of frustration. They did beat Brazil in there, but even then it kind of just felt like an afterthought, especially with how disappointing the Japan game was in particular. And then you go into April, you only play one game, which is already a disappointment, and you lose to France. That was frustrating. A lack of pre-World Cup games and the World Cup itself. Because, yeah, Priestman's also right that in the lead up, it felt like everything was flying. And, you look at 2022, you had some great celebration tour games like Stephanie Lebey's send-off. You have the, win over Nigeria at BC Place. Yeah, the CONCACAF championships, you had a setback, but still overall was a solid tournament. You did only lose 1-0 to US via penalty in the end in the final. So it wasn't as if you got the doors blew off of you completely. And then in the fall, they had some good performances against the likes of Brazil, Morocco, Argentina. So yeah, it is something where this year had been a stark contrast. It felt like at the end of last year, things were trending in the right direction, and it hit a wall. So for it to be back on track, of course, we'll have to see what this window looks like. But that last window showed that, again, this Canadian team has that talent within its ranks when it has that mentality, that belief. And, hopefully that September window is the start of them finding that again ahead of the Olympics, which as we know, is more of their tournament than the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be exciting. And I want to actually circle back here, Alex. I just saw a comment that just got my attention right away. And I want your guys' thoughts and opinions in the chat as well, because this is a very good one. Now, I asked first HFX Flem if they were going to the game, and he says, I'll be there in Halifax. Happy to have another match after this season ended. A little disappointing for a Wanderers fan, but like you said, you get rewarded with the women's national team. But Laura Jane said that only thing I'd say is that I think to host a national team game, men or women's, that it should be on a natural grass pitch. So, Alex, what's your thoughts on that? Now, I'm very curious to see because, there's obviously, we see this throughout Major League Soccer quite a bit. When Messi came to Major League Soccer, they said that he probably won't even play in certain stadiums just because it's on turf. So, what's your thoughts here on the men's and or women's national team playing on a pitch? Would you? Because you went to Starlight, so I think you're a good one to maybe touch on that, like the atmosphere, how exciting it was. But it's not a natural grass pitch. Do you agree with Laura Jane here, or what are your thoughts?
I'd say, of course, in an ideal world, you'd like there to be grass, but also that raises a discussion of how more teams need to embrace that. And I think, again, it kind of shows that we do kind of have a bit of a venue. I guess, I don't know if crisis it feels like too strong of a word, but we do need more venues. And that's why it's been so great to see Wanderers Ground Shop pop up and hopefully turn into a permanent venue. But unfortunately, one thing that stands out about this, Wanderers Grounds right now, it's it's pop-up venue mainly used for the Wanderers. They're able to use it as grass because it's mainly used for the soccer team. The problem is a lot of these venues, for example, the new Wanderers Grounds, the proposal is unfortunately turf because it's going to become a multi-use surface. And, for whatever reason, we haven't been able to create enough soccer-specific stadiums where you can go grass only, like a BMO, like a Saputo. It's always, like Stade Olympique, multi-purpose surface, terrible turf. BC Place, multi-use surface, turf. So for whatever reason, there's an issue where you're only getting stadiums if they're multi-use. So we have to find a way to get past that and get more of these 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, maybe even 10,000 seat stadiums where you can put grass in, because I agree. Ideally, it's good. If there's solutions like BMO, the fact they use a hybrid model could be a model for other teams to use. They'll be like, look, it's really cold in Toronto, but you can still use grass if you use the right combination of field heaters and hybrid grass, etc. Heck, if Cavalry can have some of the best grass in the CPL, it feels like most cities should, but then I think it's more of the venues is the problem versus the idea of using grass. And that's really unfortunate. I know at BC Place, the Whitecaps would love to have grass, but unfortunately, as one of the many, many tenants that use BC Place, they kind of end up being forgotten, and grass is very low down on the priority until a World Cup comes around.
On your point there, HFX Flem just responded saying it's funny because the proposed stadium in Halifax might be turf, so the community can use it without beating it up, but grass is definitely better. So at the end of the day, isn't most things about money and what you can use it for? So I agree. You want safety. Playing on grass is the best way to go. Maybe down the line, I know that in Major League Soccer, they're talking about having you can changeable grass, right? Like you take the grass out, swap it in with turf. So maybe that can be an opportunity. But Alex, we're going to be moving along now to the men's national team halfway through the stream. If you guys are still with us, be sure to drop a like and let us know what your thoughts are, because our opponent is confirmed. The Canadian men's national team will take on Jamaica in the quarterfinals of the Nations League. If they win that, they automatically qualify for the Copa America in 2024. And if they lose it, Alex, they will have a second bite to be able to qualify, which is important. But I mean, when I saw that we were taking on Jamaica, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, oh, like I was like a little nerve wracking. You know, a lot of, not that the Jamaican Federation is going swimmingly. There's a little bit of issues on both sides here, but this is a tough team that I think is in a better mindset and better players at their disposal than they were in World Cup qualifying. It seemed like during the World Cup qualifying, the excitement of getting all these English dual nationals in, there's a lot of issues getting some of them to actually, you know, play and travel and then just to actually mesh together. I just think it came a little too quick for them. They've looked a lot better recently. I still back Canada, but what was your initial thoughts when you saw that our opponent is Jamaica, which is, in my opinion, was the toughest draw that we could have got?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty unideal, mainly because of that first leg. Because you have to remember that as hosts, or as the top seed, can host the second leg, which could be an advantage. But of course, how much of an advantage it is if you struggle in the first leg. You know, so that's the big worry. Just because this Jamaican team is very, very good in the attack, okay in the midfield, and not so good at the back. And for Canada, they'll be able to handle the not so good at the back. We've seen it before. It's a lot of the same. Like, there haven't been that many upgrades over the last few years. On, like, you look at this Jamaican team, right? They've finished with 3 wins and 1 draw across 4 Nations League A games. Of course, the A games were without Canada, US, Costa Rica, Mexico, who have the bye to the quarterfinals. But it was still, they played Haiti twice, which, as we know, is a good team. They played Grenada. They played Honduras. So Jamaica beat Honduras once, they beat Haiti once, beat Grenada, drew Haiti the other time. And to the point I had, they scored 10 goals, which is, you know, by far the most in their group. I'm pretty sure it was the most in all of Nations League, or at least close. But then they also conceded 5 goals across those 4 games, which isn't bad. But you know, 2 of them came against Haiti. One of the, I think they also conceded to Grenada, which isn't the best offensive team. Like, Suriname shut out Grenada on Sunday, I think it was. So they are a bit leaky at the back, and we saw that during the Gold Cup. But also they're very dangerous offensively. So I'm worried about that first leg. So that offense gets going, maybe they score a goal, 2 goals, 3 goals, and then all of a sudden you're heading back to the second leg with a lot of work to do. And that's and then there'll be the pressure of Jamaica still having options to hit you on transition as you're trying to break them down.
Now, Vincent doesn't seem overly excited. He said, am I the only one who thinks that we aren't beating Jamaica? They're playing at their peak right now, and we're horrendously out of form. I don't know if I necessarily agree that Jamaica's playing at their peak. Like I said, I think they're in a much better state than they were going into World Cup qualifying. But nonetheless, they have a lot of talent in that roster. Like Alex was kind of talking about, a bit of an unorganized, like an unbalanced side, you know, very top heavy. And going to Jamaica is going to be difficult. I mean, I think a good result there, Alex, would you not say? Maybe walking out with a 0-0, 1-1 type of result, being able to come back home with that. But Alex, you and I really had a vent session on our last live stream. I don't really remember a time where I've really just kind of let it on all out after that Japan match. I was very, very disappointed in what I saw. We were kind of talking about the players' just genuine effort out there. They looked a little bit all over the place, and they got handily defeated. So knowing that that's, you know, the last taste in the men's national team mouth going into 2 very important matchups, what do you think Biello is going to do? Do you think he's going to be there? Odds are he is, right? Like, I don't think there's any way that they're going to appoint someone before that. But I mean, if it is up to him, what do you think that he's going to do leading into this? How's he going to, you know, get the guys up for it? Is he going to look to leadership in the room? Because right now there's a lot of question marks around this national team, and rightfully so. The fans aren't overly confident.
Yeah, I mean, I think Biello is going to be there. Unfortunately, fortunately, take your pick. I just say that because, you know, the turnaround. So for better or for worse, and yeah, it's going to be interesting because clearly the Canadian team looked very dismotivated or unmotivated by that friendly. Of course, these are must-win games. These are games that are huge. Like, this is a chance to potentially play an Argentina next year, play a Brazil next year in a competitive setting, to go and win a Copa America. Of course, Canada is going to be very unlikely to win, but it's still a chance to go win a Copa America, at least mentally, have that under their belts. So hopefully they can be motivated, because if they're not going to be motivated by this at this point, then there's, real issue to look at in terms of what's going on there in the dressing room. So I think it's something where the challenge should speak for itself. You're also going up against the Jamaica team. Just look at that front three that they put out, like their last game against Haiti. Damari Gray, you got Michael Antonio, Leon Bailey. That's a pretty darn good front three. That's it's, of course, Gray's now in the Saudi League, but he's not long removed from playing in the Premier League and doing well. Antonio's still in the Premier League doing well. Bailey had a pretty good start to the season for Villa and is doing well. That's a front three that can cause you a lot of trouble. So for whatever reason you're as disorganized as, just lackluster as you were against Japan, it could be a bit of a long series. So hopefully just the occasion speaks for themselves, because Canada has had a history of stepping up in these sorts of big CONCACAF games. But, they're going to have a lot of work to do based on this last window.
I definitely agree with what you're saying, and I want to take it a step further. I hope they're up for it. And you would assume these are professional athletes. A lot of them play the highest. A few of them play at the highest level, but they're all great players in this national team. They want to go out there and they want to win. We know how disappointing it was to lose to the U.S. in that Nations League final. There's another chance to get there, because yes, if they do lose to Jamaica, the Copa America we could still qualify for it. I believe, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, if they lose, they will just end up playing another loser of the quarterfinals, right? Because six nations will qualify, so that whoever the top four who make it to the semifinals of the Nations League get automatic qualification, and then they will go on a single knockout against one of the other losers. So there are two chances, but you look past the opportunity to win a trophy. If we can't get past Jamaica, there's no, Nations League. I want to see Canada compete there because they're good enough to do so. I had a lot of fun watching the Nations League, even though I was pretty heartbroken. I went into that game against the Americans thinking that we had a real opportunity to win, and it was a little disappointing. I think, it was there for a bit, but the Americans were deserving winners in my mind. So that's a big one. But for me, really, it is just qualifying for the Copa America. I want to do it in style by defeating Jamaica, going on and hopefully competing for a trophy. But generally, we need to be there. The Copa America is such a fun tournament. I remember when they played the 100th edition in the U.S. Canada, unfortunately, wasn't a part of it, but it was incredible seeing, the U.S., Mexico go up against Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay. And this is also because, as we've seen with one friendly and a possible four, maybe it's not as easy getting top tier opposition leading up to the 2026 World Cup, because maybe we just don't have the money to do so. I don't know what it's going to look like going forward, but I just know that getting one out of four friendly matches is just simply not good enough. So the opportunity of playing in a competitive atmosphere of a Copa America with some of the potential nations, I would take almost 7 or 8 of them just for good prep, but there's some very good teams in there. And I think it would be a huge missed opportunity and a devastating moment for this Canadian program if they simply lost to Jamaica and then lost the qualifiers. I don't think that will be the case, but I do think that there's a lot on the line. I think the players hopefully will be up for it.
Yeah, and you can't understate the importance of Copa America. Yesterday was the fourth round of CONMEBOL qualifiers, and I was just watching Ecuador-Colombia, which, again, that's not the heavyweight of Argentina, Brazil, say, but Ecuador made the World Cup last time around. They should probably make it again. They have some phenomenal young talents, and guys like Moises Caicedo, Kendry Páez, etc. Colombia didn't even make the World Cup last time around, and they've got an older squad, and just seeing the level of play, the intensity, that's the big thing too, that really stood out to me and stands out to me every time I watch a CONMEBOL game. And that's why it's fascinating. You saw when Argentina went on this one run in the World Cup, they just play with so much intensity there. Every tackle just seems to mean more, every pass, every mispass, some of the tactical fouls, it means all that much more. So I think for Canada as well, just the Copa America, it means a lot. Especially these teams, they're not going to want some North American team to waltz into their tournament, host it, and then win the whole thing. So it's going to be just a good test of intensity as well for Canada, because sometimes, again, that can also be the difference between levels. Is it's not so much within the top 20, top 30 national teams. They're all pretty talented. Of course, there's going to be teams like France who are kind of a cut above just because they have ridiculous depth. They have guys like Mbappe. But you look at some of those ranges. Like it's fascinating to see like versus US versus Japan. Yes, they have a clear talent advantage on Canada, but it's not that far off. The big difference, as we saw with the Japan, can be organization, just their commitment, and et cetera. And then for South American teams, it can be intensity, et cetera. So I think for Canada, they have to really take advantage of that too, because it's going to be a good opportunity to play in such a meaningful tournament like that.
Absolutely. And another big thing for me is the fact that against like a Japan, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, depth is a big issue. We saw that with the men's national team with Eustachio not being in there, and it just really took the wind, I think, out of this roster. So, I mean, we hopefully can have a fully strength team going into this Copa America, because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be exciting. I am thrilled, hopefully, at the opportunity to see Canada play in Copa America. But it's going to be so difficult, and it's really going to give us an idea of where this men's national team is at. But there is some, good football coming up. Seeing them play Jamaica, and it's this two-leg affair. It's a good team. I know it's still within CONCACAF, but there's something really on the line here. Opportunity to go for silverware and obviously automatic qualification. If you end up losing it, you have a one-off crazy tie to try to qualify, and then whatever we get leading up to this potential Nations League semifinals if we qualify, or Copa America. There's a lot of good football coming up in 2024, and men's national team fans should be excited for it. But it could be ugly depending on what some of these results could look like. So let's hope the best for the national team. But I want to change gears here a little bit, guys. So if you're in the chat, let me know. I put this out on X earlier today, I believe, or I think it was today, and got quite a few people replying back. Maybe I'll show some of the comments, but Laura Jane did ask it as well. Should the men's national team go for a top-tier manager to be their new coach, or a guy like Bobby Smirniotis to get the job? The OneSoccer crew talked about it as well, debating whether Bobby is right for it, whether he wins his fourth in 5 years in the Canadian Premier League with Forge, or if even if he loses. I think Platt, I saw a clip of Platt saying, we already know, like, he doesn't need to win this next trophy to prove that he's got the credentials. So Alex, I don't know if I've really talked to you too much about it. I've got kind of go back and forth a little bit. So what do you think? If I don't know when the timing is, let's just say maybe for the start of 2024, Canada maybe makes the decision. I think Wheeler put out that there's been hundreds of applications. I don't know exactly what he meant by that, if he was just kind of ballparking it or just saying there's interest. I don't 100% know, but I have heard other reports that there is interest in this job. There's a talented Canadian side. There's a home World Cup coming up, that there should be interest. It's just, what are you looking for? Do you think someone like Bobby could be a good coach, Canadian, worked with a lot of these national team players, and has, I think, proved everything he's already, he doesn't need to prove anything else. And I agree with Platt, whether he wins this final or not, I think that he's probably ready for that next step. And he showed interest in the men's national team job. So do you like that, or would you like to see someone maybe with a little bit more international experience, for example?
I would say just, look at whatever your best options are. And I think Bobby Smirniotis, of course, we don't know who the other options are, but you'd have to imagine he's up there. Because I personally think for management, it's as much about philosophy. It's as much about track record within what you're asked to work with. Because I disagree with the idea. I pretty relatively disagree with the idea that, you coach at a top level, you're immediately a top level coach. Because you could look at someone like a Phil Neville, who's had the chance to go straight to some pretty good jobs and has struggled with them. Whereas you look at some other examples of the few I'll use is someone like, of course, like a Walid Regraoui with Morocco. Of course, he's coaching some very good African Champions League clubs in Morocco, and he did very well. You could argue, okay, he's not a top European coach. He comes in and revolutionizes that program. You can look within the CPL Halifax. They could have easily gone for a former MLS assistant, a former MLS coach, all sorts of options. They go with the League One Ontario coach and Patrice Geyser, and look how he's been. He's been phenomenal for Halifax. And, guys like Bobby Smirniotis and Tommy Wilton Jr., they might not have the pedigree, heading into this league, but they might not have had the pedigree of some of the other coaches who came in with them. But, they had a track record of developing talent with, of course, Bobby with Sigma, Tommy with Foothills, and look what they've done. They've been fantastic at just replicating that with their CPL club. So for Bobby, I think it kind of speaks for himself that he's, with Forge, what's been fantastic to watch is how they've won. Of course, that's huge. You can't knock that. All the trophies. They've also won a regular season title. They've made it to the semifinals for CONCACAF League. Semifinals of a Canadian Championship within penalties of making a final. That speaks for itself. And then what's impressive is that he's done that while developing talent. They've moved on players to that next level. Of course, Borges in year one ended up coming back, but they moved on some other guys over the years to other leagues, and yet they just replace him. Young players come in, work with them and on to the next. So he has that track record of both things. And it is an added benefit that he knows some of the players on the national team. You could also argue that maybe some of the, maybe someone with an outside voice could be useful just because he could come in with zero bias of what, the player pool is. He could maybe have a bit of a different look and different understanding of certain players of a coach who's really known the system. But on the other side, I think Smirniotis has shown a certain level of respect that, his former players always speak so glowingly of him. Kyle Larin, Richie Larea, etc. They always go back and talk with him. They visit him. And for example, it's really telling that someone like Mandrikar James, who was one of Bobby's former pupils way back in the day, decided, I'm going to come back to the CPL and play for Bobby because that's how much it means to me. And I think all those factors are worth considering.
Yeah, you make some really good points. I like the fact also, I don't know if this matters to many, but I like the fact that he's Canadian, like nothing wrong with being a different nationality and coaching teams. I like the fact that Bobby's Canadian, like you said, he knows this program well. He's developed players, and I think showing how consistent he's been over these years with Forge has been really impressive. And the fact that he can turn it on, you know what I mean? It's not like they've been the Cavs and they've been the best regular season team, which, kudos to Tommy. But when it comes to crunch time, when it comes to delivering, this team is second to none. And Alex and I were talking about it when Forge snuck into that second spot. It's just like, we just kind of knew that Forge was going to be hosting that final just because that's what he's just drilled into his players for so long. I do think there's an interesting point here on the Bobby links is the fact that, he's coming from club football. National team football to club football is different, especially I think for man managers who like, the opportunity to be with their players day in, day out, and continually trying to work and make them better when you don't get them at your disposal quite as much. So Alex, for you, is that any concern that if you're going from a club to a national team? I personally don't think it is. You see managers do it all the time. I think Bobby would adjust, no problem. But I do see the point that it's why certain coaches are just national team coaches, and a lot of times you see club coaches remain club coaches.
Good coach is a good coach. Again, you see countless examples. John Herdman wasn't supposed to be a good Canadian men's national team coach, and you'd look as well like someone like Hervé Renard going from success in the men's game goes over to the women's game. And, those examples of coaches crossing over. Good coaches are good coaches. So really, for Bobby's case, plus I think his style would lend well to national team management, because one thing I always hear about Smirniotis that he really tells it how it is, right? He's very honest in the sense that, he's not going to sugarcoat. And sometimes, in the national team, we don't get that much time to work with guys. The fact that he'll always tell it straight, he'll keep it quick, keep it honest, that can also help as well, because at least you'll know where you stand, you'll know what is going on. So no, I would disagree with the club to coach or to international to a certain extent. Yes, it'll be different, especially tactically, but I think it's something where those, everyone's at that same advantage. Like in club football, everyone has X amount of training sessions. In international football, everyone has X amount of training sessions. It's not like it's an inherent advantage where one team is training every day in international football. Usually if they do, then they're not very good because none of their players are playing regularly at top clubs. No,
I definitely get your point there. And I think that the thing I like the most about Bobby is the fact that, when it comes to crunch time, I like that. I like that his teams, no matter how they finish, this Cavs side put up 55 points. There's 13, if I do my math correctly, it's 13 more points in this regular season than Forge, who finished on 42 and kind of stumped their ways, just somehow found second place. But no, when it matters, as he showed every season basically with Forge, when it comes to crunch time, he can get his team to deliver. And I absolutely love that about Bobby and what he's drilled into his players. And I think that, that could be important when taking over a national team like this. And I think it's time, I think I've said this, honestly, maybe after the year 3, and now, I mean, especially after year 4, and then, now this is a 5th year, like, Bobby's done it in the Canadian Premier League. I do think he's ready for a new challenge. I don't know if he's maybe waiting out for the men's national team job. Major League Soccer, we know, could be an opportunity. I don't know if he'd look for a job somewhere in Europe, but I think he's ready for something, whether it's the national team or not. I think he's ready for something. It's been amazing to see what he's achieved in the Canadian Premier League, and I'm very excited. But I do want to go over here to Vincent's point, but I'm going to touch on the first one where he said, I hope Ancelotti saw how poor Brazil was in the window and said, I'm going to go back to Vancouver and give
Neymar's injury.
yeah. No, I don't think Ancelotti is a big opportunity, and I don't know what the budget is. And I do want to touch on that. A reason that Bobby, could be an option is potentially the budget. I can't speak to it. I have no idea what it is. Maybe we can afford someone else, but just because you're not the most expensive option does not mean you're going to be the best one. And I think Bobby could be a fit here. But I do like this point here from Vincent where he says, Alex, something you and I talk about all the time, and I've been criticized for it a little bit just by a very enthusiastic viewer who says, Josh, you always want to see these young guys get brought into the fold, but they're not maybe doing enough at club level, or they're not going to break into the starting 11 with the Canadian men's national team. Why do you care about Russell Rowe? Why do you care about Laturi? Why do you want these guys in here? And it's just about getting young players into the national team because it's about looking to the future without affecting the present. And I think Vincent's point here is a good opportunity. Maybe a CPL coach could give players like Waterman, Laturi more opportunities, and even younger players as well, instead of maybe, focusing a little bit more on the older guys, like having an opportunity to get a fresh pair of eyes on this team and look to guys who you know. And I think Laturi is a great example of that, because I don't really know where he is in the depth chart right now. So do you think having Bobby coming in could really help some of these younger guys get a look, Alex? Or
I mean, hopefully, just because Bobby has such a good track record of developing young talent. And yeah, it's something worth considering, because I'd say there's been opportunity to call in a few more CPL players in there than we've seen. I think, for example, this Gold Cup could have been a chance to call in a few. For example, yes, it may be bold, but as we've seen, sometimes some of the top young players in the CPL versus young players plugging away in MLS, we've seen that there isn't that much difference sometimes in those cases. And also, you have to take a long-term view. I think of, for example, Gold Cup, you used it to see players of the future. If you call in someone in the CPL, as we've seen with some of these players, you can have a moment where you leave like a Laturi, and next thing you know, you're playing regularly in the Scottish top flight, and then you're on the national team radar. It's like, why not? If you see that happening, as someone like Laturi had a great start to last year, by getting a call to like a Gold Cup, for example, he gets a few minutes, that could also increase his profile and maybe help him make a move like that. And as well, just, get him on the radar so that when he does make a move like that, he's kind of already had that one look. I'd say there's been a time and a place to maybe even call up a few more, right? I don't know. I think we sit here talking about the lack of midfield depth, for example, and you heard that someone like a Sean Young's had interest from elsewhere. Ditto, you can do this at center back with like a Dan Nimick. Could it not make sense to call in either of those two just for a look, just to test them, push them? Teams around like, ooh, they already got national team interest. Maybe this is a player we should look at, and it could be something as well where it ends up helping both player and the national team in the future, because more clubs be like, okay, this player is maybe worth my time. If they're already getting national team interest, they make a move. Next, you've already had a look. You know what they can bring to the profile. So yeah, I mean, I just said there's countless examples of where you can have a look at some of the, just again, use the overall player pool. The player pool is good, because the bigger your player pool, the more competition you have, the more competition it has. It usually filters towards the top, and we talk about some complacency at the top, and getting some of these guys in could be a way to help that.
I saw a comment recently, Alex, and it said it should be mandatory that one Canadian Premier League player is called into each and every camp. So I was like, and a lot of people were liking it. They're like, that is so unique. That is so cool. I know that we became the first nation to ever go to a World Cup without a player playing in our domestic league. Not really, I don't think something we should be overly proud about, but it is a very young league. It's not. I think it's a little different when taken out of context, but it is curious, and I think the Canadian Premier League will be a very exciting day when a player does indeed get called up, which I'm hoping sometime in the near future could be pretty cool. But we have a comment here. Alex, and it's from Evan. Said, and we did kind of discuss it a little bit, Evan, where he said that Wheeler said that there is hundreds of applicants for the men's national team job. And for me, like I said, it's not, I don't think it's overly surprising. And I don't know all the details about, did Alex send in a resume? Like, I mean, I don't know like the quality of every single one of the applicants, but it's not surprising to me that there is a ton of interest, because this is as the national team, there's a lot of young talent. They're co-hosting a World Cup coming up. There's an opportunity to play at a Copa America, and you got, crazy talent like David, Davies, Eustachio, Johnson. Like this could be in countries Canada. Like there could be a lot of interest there. So Alex, quickly, just to end off, what would your ideal candidate look like? Give me a couple. Like maybe you look at the domestic option. Maybe it's Bobby, for example. Do you want someone who's got like exclusive national team experience? Do you want someone who's young, up and coming? Do you want someone who's established? What would your personal preference be for if a resume came by your desk and like, Alex, take a look at these guys, what candidate do you like the most?
I think my ideal candidate would be, personally, I just think someone with fresh ideas, just of sorts, like someone who's going to come in and want to play more of a up-tempo tactical style, someone who really likes the X's and O's, someone who is good at managing players, maybe someone who's young, so they've kind of got that hunger and freshness. But ideally, I think you'd like a good short list. I think a good short list would be ideal. I think for me, you'd like a candidate like a Bobby as one of them, like a CPL option, someone who's pushing to make that next step, and then maybe more of an experienced hire to contrast what someone who's been around the block, right? Like think of a Bielsa type short list. Of course, someone like Bielsa, if he's unavailable, you just put a paper and pen in front of him. But someone like that, an experienced manager, then maybe you see someone who's come from abroad, just for that different perspective in the interview. In the interview process, they could impress you. They could be like, oh, look, I looked at your pool and I noticed this is a deficiency. I noticed this is something you do well that you don't capitalize on. I'd say, I'd say a mix of an experienced hire, someone who comes from abroad, someone who's young and hungry, someone who's within the CPL, and then so I'd say a good short list of those options, because the interview process could be just fascinating to learn a bit more about how people view. So I think it's positive to see that there's so many candidates. Again, I'm not surprised, like you mentioned. There's not many jobs in the world where you come and you're guaranteed to host the World Cup. It's usually you make that World Cup or you get fired. Well, for these guys, they already got the option of, playing in the World Cup. That box is ticked. It's still, like you mentioned, an attractive job talent-wise. It's little things, but living in Canada is a pretty enticing option. Like, okay, you can come live in Canada, anywhere in Canada. For example, you want to live in Vancouver, you can live in Vancouver. You want to live in, if you're more of a big city person, you can go live out in the East Coast, et cetera, et cetera. If you're just, if you love the cold for whatever reason, go live in, you can go live in the prairies or
whatever. Winnipeg. I don't know if that's going to be a big option, but
it's an enticing job. So use that. And of course, we'll have to see if they're able to. It's one thing to attract interest, because a lot of people call them interest, and maybe they hear the terms and they're like, okay, maybe I'm not interested anymore. But weaponize that interest, use it to have a good interview process, and go from there.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I agree with the profiles you're looking at as well. I do think you and I just come out and say it. We're talking about Bobby. I think Bobby should be on that potential hire list. I do want someone who's got like a ton of experience at the international level, just for one of those options, see what ideas that they can bring. And I mean, I'm having a difficulty thinking of a different in between type a guy, maybe like a younger manager who's dipped his toes in a couple different experiences, maybe even coaching at a U21 level for a decent nation, like maybe England or France or something like that, and had some club experience. I don't know exactly what I was looking for, but I think a lot of it will depend on the money situation and obviously the hiring process. I personally think Bobby's got a chance. I don't know where we're going to go from there, but I do want to throw two names at you, Alex. And I want to ask you the simple question. Would you have any issues if an American took over the Canadian job? I know that I don't really think I do. I just, the rivalry we've had with the Americans coming up is kind of interesting, but a manager, maybe like a Bob Bradley, I've heard his name.
There's one American I'd have.
Who's that?
Only one. And he coached in Canada. It's Jesse Marsh.
Jesse Marsh. All right. That's fair. I think I put a tweet up a while back saying that Jesse Marsh, could end up there, and some Americans are like, no. So I agree. I was thinking Bob Bradley just because, he has coached at the international level and obviously at TFC, but I don't think Bob's probably the best option. And to end off the episode, I do, Bobby, if you're watching, odds are I did put a tweet out about you taking over the men's national team, and I hope that you had a lovely reception to it. A lot of people are replying saying absolutely. They would love to see it, and everything that you've done in the Canadian Premier League is deserving of an opportunity. So very, very cool, and best of luck to Forge as they host a final on the 28th. So it should be a lot of fun. But that is all for us today. No, not on the 28th. They host the final on when do they host the final? 28
on the 28th.
28th, yeah. Thinking of the national team game coming up for the women, who also play on the 28th and the 31st. So yeah. All right, guys. Well, that is all the time we have for on the stream today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to drop a like on your way out, drop a sub. Alex, thanks as always, and we will talk to you guys soon. Cheers, friends.